So welcome back and welcome to the first of three panels that were devised by the programming committee and the IBA office on the subject of imagining a more sustainable model for biennials. In this first panel, we're going to try to tackle, or at least reflect a little bit on the idea of sustainability through degrowth. That's the whole title you can see on the screen, sustainability through degrowth between ecological and strategic thinking. And our intention was really to reflect on an opposition to, let's say, an incrementalist view for biennial, something that happened probably in the past, in which there was a drive to always increase artist numbers, always increase venues numbers, imagine bigger production, and so on and so on. And so our point of view was, let's try to imagine how a biennial can look in the long term if we oppose to this. Similarly, I mentioned already at the end of the DA speech, we had invited also Majd Abel Hamid, who is a Palestinian artist. Some of you might have seen his work yesterday at the Les Grands Locaux venue. And we had invited him because of trauma that has happened to him. He had also to change his practice and to scale it down and to reimagine how his practice could look in a much more intimate and smaller scale. Unfortunately, he cannot be here. We tried contacting him. The situation in Lebanon and in Beirut in particular is so bad that he doesn't even have the stability of an electricity grid, so he cannot be here. But of course, we will send him and we send him well wishes, of course, but we will keep him, of course, on track about everything that we're doing, and of course he is in our hearts for this in this moment. With us, though, we have Nataša Petresin-Bachelez, who is an independent curator, editor, and writer. Interdependent. I'm sorry. Too used to the independent ones. And since 2021, she has been art and culture program manager at La Cité Internationale, who many of us that are going to Paris in the continuation of the program will visit. So that's also a nice connection between what's happening here in Lyon and our continuation program in Paris. She has co-curated and initiated exhibitions like When Solidarity is Not a Metaphor, C'est Voix qui m'assiège, thank you, my French is definitely not up to level, Trailblazers, Feminism, Camera in Hand, and Archive Over the Shoulder in 2023. She also curated, and I'm bringing this back to biennials, that's where we are, the Contour Biennial the 9th Contour Biennial in 2019 in Mechelen in Belgium, with the title Colton as Cotton. And the Triennial of Contemporary Art in Slovenia in 2013 at MSUN in Ljubljana, and she was chief editor of the Manifesta Journal between 2012 and 2014, and of Internazionale Online between 14 and 17. So thank you for being here with us today, Nataša. Also with us today is Lorenzo Giusti, who is an Italian art historian and curator, director of GAMeC in Bergamo since 2018. He has produced exhibitions and publications dedicated to leading figures in the 20th century art history and curated contemporary art projects in Italy and abroad, involving numerous artists from the international scene. More specifically, he has also initiated a very interesting, and I think we will hear about it, long-term research and exhibition program titled Thinking Like a Mountain, which fosters dialogue between artists and scientists on the theme of environmental sustainability and the preservation of ecosystems. And that is done through GAMeC, right? And furthermore, he has curated the 9th Biennale Gerdena in 2024. If you're interested, we have interviewed Lorenzo on the subject, and you can see the edited version of this on our YouTube channel. It's part of our IBA stage program. And it was a very inspiring discussion. I think that's also one of the reasons that led for our invitation today. And yeah, we're very happy to have you both here. And I think I can start by maybe asking Lorenzo to introduce the Thinking Like a Mountain program, and then we can take it from there.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you, Hur. And I have to confess you, I feel a little bit uncomfortable after Didier's speech and presentation. It was really important to hear your voice, and now we have to necessarily pass to another topic, but in a way, extractions and some of the concepts that you have already introduced are part of our reflections as well. So thank you very much again. Well, talking about the growth and talking about possible models, new models for the Biennale's format, well, I really believe, and this is what my experience taught me, that there are no models that work in every context. And this may seem like a very simple, trivial answer to us, but experience teaches us that this is not the case. For too long, the world has pursued a single idea of modernity, right? So, and biennials around the world have done the same. And Bruno Latour proved it to us. In reality, we could say with him that we have never probably been modern. So my experience as a museum director and the recent biennial curator convinced me of this. So they need to experiment with different models in different contexts. And in my professional life, I always moved where I have been called to work, trying to experience the place and to experience the community. So on the home page of my little website stands a sentence extrapolated from Donna Haraway's famous essay, Staying with the Trouble. Nobody lives everywhere, everybody lives somewhere. And this is a reflection on the nature of situated knowledge and perspective. So Haraway critiques the idea of view from nowhere, which implies a neutral, objective, or all-encompassing perspective that isn't influenced by any particular position or context or culture. So everybody lives somewhere reminds us that we are always situated with a particular context, and our understanding of the world is shaped by the specific environment and conditions in which we exist. So this also highlights, of course, the importance of acknowledging and valuing diverse perspectives. Everyone experiences the world differently based on where they live, both literally and probably metaphorically. And metaphor is also an important word from your perspective, right? You probably are going to say something about this word later. So anyway, talking about models or no models, here I can try to bring the experience of the Orobie Biennial, the Thinking Like a Mountain project, which I'm now working on after having curated the Biennale Gerdena. So the territory of Bergamo and its province is called Orobico on account of the alpine range that surrounds it. So the Orobico territory is therefore the area that stretches from the alpine sections known as the Orobie to the Bergamo plain, including the valleys generated by the rivers that originate in the Orobie Alps area, including the Seriana Valley. Seriana Valley became world famous in 2020 for being the first outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Western world with 5,000 of deaths. So For this reason too, or better, I would say, starting from this reason, I thought it might be a good idea to create a biennial of the Orobie, managed by the GAMeC, so the Gallery of Modern Contemporary Art in Bergamo, to remember that moment, but above all to remember the lesson and the reflections that the Bergamo community learned at that time during the handling of the pandemic, and of the commitments, the many commitments that were made during that time. Especially on issues concerning sustainability, and in its, let's say, broadest and deepest meaning, which means collective growth, probably more than degrowth, civic sense, solidarity, mutual support, caring for ties, modes, and times of consumption, and mutual protection. So we had the chance on that time. I also founded a little radio station, inviting people of the community together with other guests from outside to share ideas, experiences, vision of the future. It was a very, very tough, terrible, but at the same time, inspiring moment for the entire community. So we really had the opportunity to reconsider ourselves, also as an institution, to reconsider the position of the institution on the territory, right? Donna Haraway again speaks about the necessity of staying with the trouble. So this idea of the Orobie Biennial, thinking like a mountain project, encourages us to confront and engage with complex, messy problems rather than seeking quick solution and escaping. So she advocates for collaborative multi-species survival in a world marked by ecological and social crisis, where humans and non-humans must coexist in an interdependent interrelation. So the Thinking Like a Mountain program, biennial program, slash the Orobie Biennial, which is not the title of the program, of the project, because I decided not to make a biennale in the traditional sense. It starts from here. Maybe I can tell you more about it later.
Thank you for the brief overview of a biennial, not to be maybe a biennial. You mentioned already the word, not metaphor, yeah, metaphor, which is I think a link to Nataša's work. But I think it was also important for us to have you also for your work in Paris with artists there and so on. So have someone that is much closer to biennials, to artists, but that has experience also in biennials. So yeah, I give you the stage to structure it as you find fit. But we would like this to be as dialogic and open as possible. So yeah, a reminder that we're trying to have a discussion rather than a lecture from a panel. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So good morning to everyone, or good day to everyone. I hope you're doing well in these horrendous times. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for the invitation to the program board. Thank you for the amazing lecture, Didier. And it really brings me back to Belgium, which I will just share a few words and memories in this terrible white country that neglects that actually it's almost 50% non-white population living there. So as Christian, thank you for the questions that you sent also. So for me, let's say we can come to that maybe later, but the interdependence, mutuality, care have been really permitting my curatorial practice. So I do not believe in terms of independence. I have been brought into that, or I have been brought up as a baby curator or as a young curator in the times of previous generations of curators, where the global networking was extremely important and has been enabled for a short period of time by possibility of mobility after the end of apartheid on one side and after the end of totalitarian regimes in the Soviet and socialist countries. So I come from there. I come from a former Yugoslavia. I always say I'm Yugoslavian. I share those values. So I have been through war, have been, very much marked by that. So I think this all really informs me in thinking about places. Like Lorenzo said, I have worked enormously on the questions of situated curating as well, about the questions of durability and longevity, especially when it comes to biennials, and on the questions of interdependence, because I believe that it is such a fake construct when we work as freelance curators. This idea of being independent, it's really independent from what? There is nothing like that. You are dependent on financial, economic, mobility issues, political issues, and everything that goes along, whether there is peace or war in that country, etc., etc. So there is this, and interdependence for me comes also with the question, so that's how I link it also to degrowth, to the questions of mutuality. If we are to change anything as cultural workers, as artists, as art professionals, in today's situation, I think it has to be profoundly looked at what we are doing, methods of working, methods of relationships, building relationships, that we look at them from intersectional perspectives, where sustainability is understood as intersectional, meaning that it's not greenwashing. It cannot be, because we are back to extraction, extraction of knowledges, extractions of resources, in order that there are electric cars. I mean, I will not go into that. We know all these stories. So that on one hand, and profoundly anti-capitalist. I think we do not talk enough about other ways of financializing what we are doing, other ways of structuring economic, sustainable economic models that are not based on immediate financialization of the works of art that are produced, but that are rather maybe based, like several museums have started to think about buying collections together. So there are many endeavors and you know about that, some of you are here, that are thinking about how biennials could co-produce together, can happen together, so that people can move to one place and benefit from a few locations to visit and experience the situated perspectives from there. So I think, but in the way of, I mean, I'm anti-capitalist and anti-colonial. I think it's this kind of perspective that comes together, and I have tried to. It was 2017 that I have been asked to curate the Contour Biennale 9. As you might be aware, today the Contour Biennale is no longer. I have started a letter when this has become a fact. I'm still very affected. Actually, when I speak, I feel very emotional, actually, about that. So in 2017, I started to think about, I was very inspired by a dear friend and collaborator, Saul Williams, who is an amazing activist, slam poet, film director, who lives in the States and sometimes in Paris. And he has a poem that is called Coltan as Cotton. And coltan, as you know, is the mineral that is in almost 80% mined in Congo and in some parts of Rwanda. So I brought this, I asked him if I can transpose this poem into the concept of the biennial, so he agreed generously on that. And for me it was a metaphor, but not a metaphor at the same time, to talk about Belgian colonial relations, through which we should look at what degrowth and sustainability today is. So the fact that the way the coltan is produced, that is in all our computers, in all our phones, etc., really perpetuates all kinds of relations of forced labor, of slave labor, of child labor, of zones of conflicts that go alongside with the mining of this mineral. And for me, it was really important in Mechelen, in a place that there are around, so children up to 12 years old. I remember in 2017, 50% of children up to 12 years old are from foreign origins than Flemish white. And when I came to the institution that was hosting me as a curator, I understood that the whole team was white, not only in phenotypal existence, but especially in the minds, and their whole program was white, again in the mind set. So it became very clear that I wanted to not only think about the ways in which degrowth and decoloniality meet, but I also I proposed to have a biennial where there would be 95% of all the artists coming either by bike, by car, by train. So we had basically 3 people who flew in that have worked on this biennial with us. So it was a kind of experiment, and we have prolonged it over 1 year because I wanted to see if it would be possible to establish a biennial that would have a long, that would be engaged in longevity, in establishing traces for communities that live there. I have been almost burned like a witch. I have been almost kicked out by the board. Even before we actually opened the biennial, I was told I was micromanaging. I was told I'm very bad in running the budget. The budget was, artistic budget was 70,000 euros. We have tried to raise some funding, but we didn't get that. And the board very ironically told me that I also not only worked on degrowth as a topic, but also degrowing the public. So, because there was not many international public coming, but a lot of local communities. So at the end of the whole situation, the director never said goodbye to me, or we didn't have any kind of exchange. And the next edition that happened was with mostly white curators based in Belgium that he invited. And he, or the directions, or the board decided to stop with the biennial. So it means that something that I have tried to actually bring through and say, look, it's not possible, it's no longer possible to work the way you have worked until now, and I would be very happy to contribute to thinking how to move forward. It has been completely not only erased, so not only they don't have, for example, for the previous editions you will find nothing online. I have just checked on the website. But it's also, they did not consider that this could have been at least a little bit interesting in the times in which we are. So, but we did establish, as a part of the biennial, we established an alliance of 9 different academies, architectural schools. Mechelen has a great university, Thomas More University, where there is intercultural communication department. So we did a transnational alliance that was looking into, it was called We Cannot Work Like This, practices of degrowth and of decoloniality. And we have been meeting throughout the whole year of the biennial in trying to actually talk to the students who were part of this alliance, how to transform their practices for the future. And until today, many of them are still in contact across different schools. And so I think a longevity that I was hoping for, of course, is embedded somewhere else.
Yeah, thank you for the introductions, both of you, and thank you for mentioning anti-capitalism. But I would also add anti-consumerism, which is a term that we all forgot and we kind of left in the 80s or early 90s. I think the last time that someone used it properly. And in relation to your projects, I think it's obvious how, I mean, we use the word degrowth. We were talking yesterday with Lorenzo a bit. It's, degrowth itself is a complicated and problematic, probably, term. But for us, it was a key word to try to tackle exactly those terms, no? Those ideas of there is an alternative way of dealing with it economically. There is an alternative way of dealing with time of biennials as well. You mentioned the longevity of the effect of a biennial or the presence of a biennial. And I think I want to try to, if you don't mind, I want to try to like ask you, but also open it up already, by trying to look at building on your experience on biennials, both positive and negative, but trying to look at the positives, to try to ask you, first of all, what aspects of biennials you think can provide positive examples to other institutions of how to handle this idea of degrowth and how to deal with alternatives and so on, like specifically what you found in working with the model of a biennial that can contribute to this discussion. And it's a question that I'm also opening up to the rest of the
So I do apologize if it was perceived as a personal ranting. It was not. It's really, or a kind of revenging back. It's not at all that. It's just that I think, as I'm very inspired by a lot of what you are doing. Many of you are actually running already biennials that really have transformed not only curatorial practices but also the ways in which the biennials are situated within the context. I thought, yeah, to share first the negative experience and let's go to the positive ones. So for example, it's very impressive what I have experienced of working with Alia Svastika on the last biennial in Yogyakarta, where the concept was about translocality and transnationality. So to think actually of biennials as sites of translocality. What does it mean actually when an artist collective that is coming to a place that they don't know well, how can we actually, as curators, as institutions, how do we enable a meaningful dialogue that would then also talk to the public? And who is the public? Whom are actually biennials addressing? That's actually one of the, for me, the key issues that I try to always ask when I curate. But I think that for the biennials it's of extreme importance, because that's where the longevity can be inscribed. That's where the traces can be made. And that's where also the biennials can become part of the social fabric. And this is how I experienced actually the attempts, the way the hospitality in Yogyakarta has been, you know, on the front of, on the upfront of the let's say of the curatorial thinking about this translocality. There are also Autostrada is here from Prizren, a really dear city of mine. I really love that city. And bringing back curators for several editions is really, really a daring and a new way of thinking. I would say new way. It's not new way because there have also been biennials done that, like that, but it means that there is a wish to engage that particular thinking for a longer period, over a longer period of time, in order to produce something that is again makes sense to the communities that are there. So I would say that kind of examples are for me really, really important. And then again, this kind of connecting, like with the graphic biennial in Ljubljana, that has connected to a curatorial group that was part of several festivals. Of course, then it's the question, how do you do it? Like, are you committed to all those stations in the same way? But this is a question, of course, for each curator personally.
Yes. Well, yesterday, while talking with Filippa, remind me the word that you have used to describe the work of they were not mediators, creative mediators. Okay, this is a very nice way, I mean, interesting, I mean, not so correct, I believe, way to interpret the work of curators within the different local communities. Mediator, facilitators, this is also something that we are trying to do in Bergamo, for what is this, thinking like a mountain program. The program, it works like this. It's not a biennial in the traditional sense of this word. It is a biennale, il biennale. So it's not la biennale, because it's not an event happening every 2 years, but for 2 years. So for the next 2 years, we will be developed projects coming out from the encounters between local communities, different sort of community. They can be association, volunteers, students, but also administrators, normal, common people, etc., with international artists. So in this sense, it's more local as an experiment, but also international in a way. Yeah. So what you said? Translocal. So the key words for the projects are more local, long-term, and environmentally conscious in a way, but in this case, I interpret the word in the sense of making project to scale. So not try to make it as big as possible, but to scale, depending on different sort of resources that you can provide to the local communities from the budgets and from the resources that you as institutions has already obtained by major partners, both public and private funds, etc., and local resources, where local resources has to be interpreted not only as economical resources, but mainly as human resources. So what we're trying to do is to start as creative mediators or facilitators. We also have ambassadors spread all over the territory. They invite us to meet, encounter different people, and we start talking about the territoriality. So what's going on in a certain territory, what are the problems, what are the desires, what are the requests. So we try to interpret these desires and requests, and we start looking together to the work of different artists that could be involved for the development of a project. So the curators, the mediators, they propose them different possible activity to be developed, and they select together with us which one to try to develop within the territory. So at this point, we start looking for the money to develop the project, and we try to making as soon as we can, but without having a strict deadline. And this is what is making this project a long-term project, because you have a deadline that you have to rush at a certain moment. And acceleration is probably the most horrible and most unsustainable thing that we are now facing with. So this is why, yes, we were talking about de-acceleration. So maybe better than degrowth, the concept of de-acceleration could be taken into consideration as a I don't want to say the right perspectives, because there are multiple perspectives to be adopted, but one of the measures to be considered.
I would just like to add another experience which was very important to me, and I think it kind of goes into I agree about de-acceleration, but degrowth is, again, we're going back to anti-colonial, anti-capitalist, anti-consumerist. It has this promise in its set of thinking from different perspectives: economic, social, feminist, and I have had a pleasure to visit the Asia Pacific Triennial in Brisbane in 2018, and I came there, you know, a bit like pretentious. I'm going to speak. They invite me to speak about Contour Biennial. I'm going to give my best, etc. I'm going to say we only need local biennials. You know, and what the wrong thing that happened was that first I gave a speech, which was local publics, the importance, blah blah blah, all of what I just shared, and then I go into the museum. It was a Sunday, like today, to visit the Triennial. It was a very sunny day, full of families. Older generations, friends, lovers, individuals, groups coming together, staying long in front of one artwork, talking, discussing, I agree, I don't agree. I was amazed, and when I walked through, the curator walked me, Ruth Buchanan, walked me through the exhibition. At least 50%, if I'm not mistaken, were the artists that have already contributed to the Triennial for the last 3 editions. So it means a long-term engagement. And this meant for the public to recognize again and again, to see actually, so now they did this, they're back, they're looking into something else. Oh, it's so great to see this work, this artist again. Look how they changed their practice, etc., etc. And these were really, the public was a non-professional public. So I felt like really like an idiot. And I said like, oh, it's, I'm going to take back everything I said. And they were, no. It was very interesting to, and I realized, of course, I was really speaking from European perspective. So again, the situatedness is of extreme importance, and humility. Humility is not something that we use a lot as curators. I mean, there is such an, we were brought up as, you know, this figures that centralize everything, that have to be in charge of everything. I think it's really time to move from that phantasm. And understand that, that interdependence, or understanding interdependence regarding the artists, regarding the public, regarding the institution that hosts the biennials, regarding the history of the place, brings certain humility regarding the non-humans that occupy that place and have the same right as humans to that land on which this is taking place. It should, I think, and hope, bring us to the humility.
Yeah, thank you. I think the 3 words that stuck with me and that I keep thinking about, and you mentioned 2 of them already, so that's great. But one is this situated knowledge. Also in translating what degrowth means, also in translating what anti-capitalism means, also in translating what anti-colonialism means. It does not mean something universally, but we have to adapt it. We have to be aware of what it means to a local, to an area, to a region where we are working. Which then builds on the idea of translocality that you both mentioned in a way or another, which expands that and understands it as, I'm not just talking at Lyon as physically Lyon, but Lyon has connections, has interconnections with other geographies, be it because of the background of the people here, but also be it because of the physical connections and interdependencies between the city and other regions. So yeah, I think that was a very, it set the scene for a very interesting, I mean, it was a very interesting conversation, but I think it also set the scene for one. You mentioned already a few of the other biennials present, which I think is also great. So I would like to open it up, of course, if someone wants to contribute. I'm also looking at the time, I'm aware of that. I'll continue, of course, we can continue the discussions, but if you want to intervene, please do so at any time, also in the sense of anti-hierarchical way of handling a panel. So feel free to interrupt and raise your hands and so on. Lorenzo.
Me, I was just thinking that from the environmental perspective, degrowth is a condition that we are already facing. Okay, it cannot be considered as a strategy, because we have already passed in many different areas of the world the limit of growth. So if you go back to the famous report made by the Club of Rome in 1972, what was a sort of algorithm, a sort of artificial intelligence. It was called Wall Tree, if I well remember. It was an algorithm preventing the limit of growth, what time would the limit of growth would have been reached, and the provision was between 2050 and 2100. But they have recently updated this limit 2 years ago on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the report, and the limit will be joined globally much sooner, but in some areas of the world it has been already reached, right? So we are over the limit, so this area is not regenerating the resources, natural resources, and so the degrowth is already happening. And the problem of this kind of degrowth happening in a forced way is more like a sort of collapse than a strategic degrowth. So I'm not very much comfortable with the idea of degrowth, because degrowth is we are experiencing degrowth through facing the collapse in a way. So we should really try to reduce our carbon footprint. Of course, this is what we necessarily have to try to do in many different ways, but one way is to also try to produce projects and things that really matter. Right? So, because if you talk about the production of a work, you cannot, I mean, you need energy and you need material, you have to consume material, you have to move material, so it cannot be different. So what is more important is that at the moment you are doing something, you have to try to make it very good, and it has to mean something for a certain number of people at least. So we should pass from zero impact to the maximum impact possible of the actions we develop, right? So reducing the actions, but with the major impact possible. As a curator, I mean, I'm trying to take into consideration this possibility. Otherwise, you can be freezed by the idea of the imminent collapse.
How about thinking rather than in what you're saying, in prolonging what you're saying, then maybe we could rather consider biennials as sites also of experimental thinking, because I think as biennials, still triennials, festivals, they still bring together a large amount of public. So there is this transmission that of some kind of content, of some kind of, let's say, inspirational ways of working that could be embedded in those manifestations. So I'm thinking about our role also in preventing for genocides to take place. So how do we do that? So is maybe degrowth not the right word, but divesting? So how can we bring together divesting, active contribution to educating about what brings war conflicts together, why there has been why there is no, you will come to Cité Internationale des Arts has been thought as it's a post-Second World War project, very utopian project that tries to bring together artists. There are up to 300 artists that we have at any given moment in residency. And it has always, their oeuvre was about let's bring artists together so that the conflicts are thought differently than producing a response that would be a violent one. So let's dialogue about conflicts through culture and arts. And how to do that? Well, by having artists who are maybe coming for a period of time from the countries that are opposing in a violent conflict and are staying in a given time and space together. I mean, things like that. So, but the divesting is also related to military-industrial complex, to which art and capitalism are both, I'm sorry to say, but it is true, it is connected. And then, of course, from the feminist side, everything to do with socialist values of abolitionism, different ways of working with, with social issues of punishment, of crime, etc., etc. So, but this is larger themes. I just wanted to bring that through degrowth, divest.
No, I think there are larger things, but they are connected. I don't think that the ecological is separate from that as well. So I think it's good that you brought those up. I'll give the words.
Thank you. That was where I was also going. You talk about kind of ecological sustainability, about should we build a wall, should we, not ship an artwork, but nobody talks about the ecological disasters with ecocide that is happening and the white phosphorus bombs that are dropping over Beirut right now. And I think it's very naive for us to think that, us switching to different materials and flying a little bit less would make an impact when these warplanes and jets and military complex, like you mentioned, are really the biggest cause of ecocide that's happening. Yeah.
Are there any other questions, contributions? I want to take a moment also, because we talked about MASH before, but also one of our board members is currently in Beirut, Christine Tomei, so it's good to remember that we're all involved in current conflicts. We cannot be neutral, definitely. Contributions? Questions? Okay, wonderful. We solved it. Great. Before we conclude the panel, though, I have to ask my colleague Jennifer to come up for a small announcement. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind everyone the lunch break is from 12:30 to 2:30. If you would like to see the exhibition, you will be able to go down to the first floor or second floor for Americans. But you can go there to view the exhibition. Everybody is welcome, but you cannot have drinks there. So please leave all your beverages here.
Thank you, and see you for the next panel after lunch. Thank you.